associated with foreign interference and the potential for external interests to be prioritized over the common good. However, the authority to legislate carries a fundamental obligation to ensure that all proposals conform to the Constitution of Uganda and international human rights standards. Laws must be precise and transparent to prevent arbitrary enforcement. Upon reviewing the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026, we find that its current restrictive and punitive framework poses a direct threat to the exercise of the Islamic faith. If enacted, the bill's vague provisions will obstruct the fulfillment of the 5 pillars of Islam, specifically Salah, Zaka, Sawm, and Hajj. Salah means prayer, Zaka means almsgiving, Sawm means fasting the month of Ramadan, and Hajj means the pilgrimage to the holy place, alongside the Sunnah practice of Sodaka. And also it may jeopardize those people who give Sodaka, which is charity. By imposing these restrictions, the bill violates Article 29 of the Ugandan Constitution, which guarantees the freedom of religion and worship. We call upon the legislature to revise these measures to ensure they do not infringe upon the fundamental rights of the Muslim community in Uganda and outside. Summary of the concerns, of the key concerns. Constitutional violation, Article 29, 1C. The bill directly infringes upon the constitutionally guaranteed right to freedom of worship. 2. Obstruction of the Islamic pillars. The proposed legislation creates security-led red tape that hinders the practice of Salah, Zaka, Hajj, and Ramadan. 3. Unfair labeling of foreigner agents. The bill unfairly categorizes religious leaders, charitable institutions, recipients, beneficiaries as foreigner agents, subjecting them to an unnecessary, tedious process of registration. Number 4, unrealistic financial constraints. The limit of 20,000 currency points, Uganda shillings approximately 400 million, funding per year without approval from the minister is unrealistic, and a penalty of 4 billion attached to it. This will affect progress of Muslim projects in the country, including the maintenance of the National Mosque itself. As you are aware, this parliament, some few months back, you passed some assistance to this place. 5. Criminalization of religious guidance by labeling the declaration of goods or services economic sabotage. The bill risks criminalizing religious leaders for providing essential moral and dietary guidance to the faithful. Those 5 areas. Number 1. So we got 3. The impact of the bill on Muslim faith. Salah and the maintenance of mosques. Salah is the second pillar of Islam, practiced 5 times a day in congregation. Islamic traditions teaches that a person is rewarded for every step taken walking to a mosque for prayers, and that Allah builds a house in paradise for a person who builds a mosque. Mosques are Allah's houses where faith is strengthened, morals inculcated in our lives, souls refined, and citizens encouraged to desist from social evil such as corruption, theft of public resources, and providing unjust leadership. The role of foreigner support. It is a matter of public record that the Muslim community in Uganda relies heavily on foreigner donors to construct mosques and provide water sources for ablution, which all benefit the wider community. Our national mosque at Old Kampala stands as a premier testament to this global solidarity. Its construction and ongoing maintenance have been sustained by foreign funding rather than local contributions. In contrast, the only notable local support recalled is the 2.5 billion provided to the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council in 2023 for constitutional reviews and elections, and the allocation of 14 billion to settle one Chabwazi debt as a result of court battles that had led to the attachment and auctioning of the National Mosque. Legislative constraints and concerns. Proposed bill threatened this religious foundation through several restrictive and measures. Number 1, financial, clause 22. The bill imposes a strict annual cap of 400 million on a foreign funding without written ministerial approval. This limit is insufficient for the construction of a modern mosque and the maintenance of a large-scale institution like a national mosque. Apart from that, when we look at this amount of money they are talking about, one of these organizations listed here, I don't know whether we have an MP from Kayunga here. We are constructing a fully-fledged ward for sickle cells people because they are being treated on a street in that hospital. And its cost is over 400 million, including furnishing it, putting everything there in. So when you restrict us to only 400 million in a year, it means we shall do one project or we shall fail to do that project even when it is of a national interest. Kayunga Hospital, I don't think, is for the Muslim community. Number 2 of that example, we do, some of you in your own constituencies, we have provided water, power motorized water, solar water. I don't know whether we have an MP from Kajara here. In my former school called Chitunga High School, where I went, ever since I was there in the 70s, up to recently, their problem was water. One of the organizations represented here, through foreign funding, we constructed a water well which provides 6,000 liters of water per hour, over 50 million. So that is why we think, for us as Muslims, and that is charity anyway. So the moment you restrict us from doing charity, you are impinging on our faith. So that is number 2. And red tape clause 15 and 16.
Imam,
yes.
Information to you. In the constituency of the chairman here,
we have a school.
The chairman here, in his constituency, you constructed a school.
Yes, even in Kamuli,
you constructed the school through that charitable chairman here.
That we have been to the whole of this country, and recently I have been in Karamoja, and we are going to provide a school, a same school actually in Karamoja, because I was astonished. A group of about 30 school-going children, when I met them in their village, in Kangole, and I greeted them simply, how are you? None of them replied. When I asked why, they said, we don't know school. And the school is 10 kilometers from here, we can't go to school. So we offered to put the structure for the school, and soon I will be to Karamoja, maybe next week, to converse on this one. Okay. Let me speak in the microphone. Stigmatization and red tape, clause 15 and 16, by requiring any entity or person receiving foreign support to register as a foreign agent under the Department of Peace and Security, the bill risks unfairly labeling mosques leaders and religious institutions as agents of foreign powers. And sometimes, when you leave it plainly, I have been following ever since we started this committee work. I listened to the Attorney General, and he said, you know, the Attorney General, who is a lawyer, I am not a lawyer, but I got opportunity also to teach at the School of Law, despite that I'm not a lawyer, for 3 consecutive years, and the biggest school of law in this country. So he said, as if he's presuming that somebody is going to commit a what? A mistake. And he says, if you see you can remove it. Then I realized how many laws, for example, Public Order Management Act asks us that if we want to organize anything, we inform the police. But the police, out of fear, thinking that they are respecting their leaders, they say that we must ask permission. So that's why we are worried that interpretation of this by auxilious implementers who are full of fear, confusing it to be respect, may cause problems to the people of Uganda under this bill. 3, security.
Imam, I request you, Imam, to stick to your text name.
These clauses will stifle the maintenance of our holy sites, entangling religious institutions in security-led red tape simply for receiving donations intended for worshiping and community service. Number 2, in Zaka, almsgiving. Zaka is the 3rd pillar of Islam and the mandatory obligation of wealth, obligation for wealth. Whether they are in the world to give a specified portion of their assets, cash, livestock, produce, or materials to those in need. The Holy Quran, chapter 9, verse 60, which says, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين. For easy tension, to ease tension, this explicitly says that Sodaka or Zaka is for the poor, is for the needy, those who work in it, the wayfarers, those in debt, those who are sick, blah, 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 8 categories. So when you restrict, if supposing a rich man in the Muslim world wants to give all his zakat to Uganda and it is above 400 million shillings, what happens? Because it's the portion of his wealth. Therefore, that's why we think that this thing has issues. What are the legislative constraints in this one and concerns? The Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 threatens to criminalize and obstruct this mandatory act of faith through the following. Number 1, registration and ministerial control, which is part 3 of that clause. The bill makes it mandatory for all recipients of Zaka to register as agents of foreigner. It grants the minister sweeping powers to deny or suspend this registration, effectively giving the government the authority to prevent Muslims from receiving Zakat. 2, burdensome reporting. Recipients would be forced to file returns to the minister, introducing tedious conditions for a simple act of worship. 3, forfeit of funds, clause number 22. Any zakah sent from abroad exceeding Uganda shillings 400 million without prior ministerial permission is subject to forfeit. These restrictive measures will discourage international donors from sending zakah to Ugandans, directly interfering with the fundamental religious pillar. 4, prohibition on social welfare, clause 7. This clause prohibits an agent of a foreigner from engaging in social welfare or infrastructure activities without cabinet approval, encroaching on the direct distribution of alms. I have already given examples, I don't need to repeat. 3, Ramadan. Ramadan and the community feeding. Ramadan is the 4th pillar of Islam, observed annually during the month of Ramadan. Muslims are encouraged to feed the needy with immense spiritual rewards promised to those who provide items for others to break their futars. Uganda is a significant beneficiary of global contribution that enable the poor to observe the month of Ramadan. Uganda Muslim Assembly, this year alone, throughout this country, distributed food to over 12,000 families, equivalent to 1.5 billion Uganda shillings. Now they want to restrict us. I don't know how many times you have been in the camps with a lot of food and others. So there are legislative constraints and concerns over this part. The bill's unreasonable procedures and funding limitations will undermine the ability of underprivileged Muslims to practice their fast. Number one, influence on social dynamics, clause 22. The bill provides for the forfeit of assets. This one, even if I don't repeat, I have already said it. But above all, the fine it puts there. They are restricting you from receiving 400 million, but the fine is 10 times. This is extremely unfair. I don't know. As a student of Islamic thought, I am inclined to think that somebody who did this is heartless. Number two, restricted property. Mosque property could be confiscated simply for hosting foreigner-sponsored feeding programs. 3. Restriction on policy and provision. Provisions prohibiting individuals from carrying out activities that overlap with government policies, unless authorized, may prevent the distribution of food and essential items, hindering followers across the country from breaking their fast according to Islamic tradition. Number 4, pilgrimage. Hajj. Hajj is the fifth pillar of Islam, an obligation to be fulfilled at least once in a lifetime. For years, Islamic countries, foreign organizations, and charitable individuals have sponsored Ugandans who cannot afford the journey. Notably, even one office of the president has recently been a beneficiary of such a generation of sponsorship, which have helped many fulfill their Hajj. You are all aware that the government of Sudan during the time of Bashir gave Uganda, the president of Uganda, money to take 100 pilgrims. So this justifies that we need this support, since even the government itself receives it to give it to the people. Legislative constraints and concerns. While the bill exempts the government from restrictive measures, it imposes unkind hurdles on ordinary citizens. Number 1, expansion of the term foreigner. Clause 1. The bill defines foreigners to include Ugandans living in the diaspora. Consequently, a Ugandan in the UAE or United Kingdom sponsoring a relative for Hajj could trigger foreigner agent registration requirements under Clause 15. 2. Targeting students and pilgrims. Muslims traveling abroad for Hajj or religious studies risk being categorized as foreigners simply for being outside the country for the unspecified period. And you know, the bill does not specify the time to be called a foreigner. Even one day, you may qualify. This will inevitably constrain ordinary citizens from accessing the international support necessary for their spiritual journey. Sodaka, charitable giving, and Islamic education. Sodaka is a fundamental Islamic practice emphasized in the Holy Quran and the Sunnah. As a matter of fact, the Quran says that when a person is approaching death, one only thing he will regret is not paying Sadaka. And he will ask the Almighty, can you delay me for at least a moment so that I can pay Sadaka and be among the faithful? All these other things, no. We are all going to regret as we are going to die. Sadaka. But now we are being restricted on the amount we want to give. Therefore, I am saying Sodaka is a fundamental Islamic practice emphasized in the Holy Quran and Sunnah. It encompasses everything from a simple smile to the donation of land and millions of cash funds. Given a history of marginalization, the Muslim community in Uganda has relied on global Sodaka to educate vulnerable children, build schools, provide water sources, and support hospitals. This charity transcends religion. For example, Islamic organizations have constructed a boreholes in Katakwe, home of the Vice President, and Bukedeya, home of the Speaker of Parliament. The Islamic University in Uganda secured a $13.5 million from Islamic Development Bank to establish a faculty of engineering in addition to other donations Sodaka to train Ugandans. Therefore, we are concerned because we are aware that many of us, including myself, I am a beneficiary of the Rockefeller Foundation. When I was doing my master's degree, Rockefeller funded me. So when you say we limit foreigners from funding people, including many of you, you are beneficiaries. And on that side, I see many of you who have benefited from the Australian sponsorship scheme. You see, I know several of you, because I recommended you and you passed through. I know. Therefore, it is with that background, Mr. Chairman, that we are concerned. Therefore, what are the legislative constraints here and concerns? The